Welcome, welcome everybody to Seattle 1 Million Cups. I am Katie. I'll be your host for today. And if you have not already connected with us, Leif's going to be adding some of these great details in the chat. So that way you can connect with us, but make sure you've got a beverage if you want one, and bookmark our link tree. I'll hop over to that. Linktree is awesome. It's your one link to rule them all. If I channel my Lord of the Rings history here, you could just bookmark that one link, and then you can get access to our Zoom link is on there all the time. You can make sure you're signed up for our email list so you get reminders, and all kinds of good stuff is all on there. And we're here every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So what is 1 Million Cups about? We've got a few new folks joining us, so thank you so much for being here. But we're really all about, sharing ideas, being a community that offers help, asks for help, and that we're really supporting each other on this journey of entrepreneurship. Regardless of where you're at, we don't ask that you have a specific barometer or revenue marker or anything like that. None of that is required in order to be here, and we've had folks who join us from all walks of entrepreneurship, which is so fun because we can all learn from each other. We all have the same stuff we're always continually working on. So we're about presentations, not pitches. Sometimes the actual presentation will sound a bit more like a pitch because that's what the presenter needs. They need practice, presenting their business more to an investor rather than to prospects. We're also about connecting, not networking. Some great business relationships can come out of community like this, but other times it's just really great community and good friends. And we all know that the know, like, and trust factor is what really leads to, referral business and everything. So we're for the community, by the community, completely volunteer led. And we are radically and intentionally inclusive. And if you see ways that we could be more inclusive, please let us know. We're part of the 1 Million Cups Nation, which is all over the country in a ton of different chapters. We all meet Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Because of the pandemic, of course, some folks have paused meeting or have transitioned to virtual like us. But there's tons and tons of entrepreneurs around the country who are meeting to be in community, learn from each other, and tons of volunteers run this thing. We seek education, presentations, and connection. And so the presentation part is pretty obvious, right? We always have a presenter, but the education piece might not always be super obvious. But ultimately, the education piece happens for all of us. We can learn from the coaching that is for the presenter at the time, and we can think about, how does that apply to me? What can I learn from that? How can I up level my business because of this reminder or this learning or this reframe of a topic that I've already heard, but now I'm hearing it in a different frame, right? So we're always learning here. And then of course, connections, right? So some of the best connections happen because people are engaging in the conversation and also stay on at the end for breakout rooms. Over 8,000 entrepreneurs have shared their stories since 1 Million Cups was started. And here at 1 Million Cups Seattle, we're about 3.5 years old. Thank you to our community sponsors, McLaughlin Method, A Small Studio, and Human Up for helping provide us with access to tools that, we all need to run our businesses or events and things like that. And to our community volunteers. So like we said, we're for the community and by the community. And today we have the awesome honor of doing a little bit of a send-off for Leif, who has been our lead organizer for the last little bit here. Yay, Leif. Thank you so much for all that you've done.
Do I have to talk?
You don't have to, but you can.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a natural progression for all people involved in organizing in 1 Million Cups, is that we kind of you do the organizing for a bit and then you get to come and just be a community member. So I'm very excited to have contributed what I could and then get to just come back and enjoy it and also present at other 1 Million Cups events, which I've not done yet. So I'm looking forward to that. But it's been a wonderful ride.
Yeah, well, thank you, Leif. You have been such an incredible, incredible like force of grounding and helping us get to the level that we're at here and saw us through going virtual. So thank you for that. And, you know, with the organizing team, the whole point here is that we're always evolving and that we always reflect the needs of the community. And so if you've ever thought at all, even an inkling about joining us on the organizing team, we'd love to have a conversation. No pressure. It is pretty low, pretty low effort. Because we, as you've probably noticed, we kind of have a plan and we kind of keep it running if you've been here before. But we're always looking for new ideas and looking for ways to level up this community because we see a lot of power in 1 million cups. And we think that could be because of you. So what to expect today? We've had a little bit of conversation. You brought your own beverage. I just realized we should change that from coffee to BYO. And then we're going to have a 6-minute entrepreneur presentation and 20 minutes of Q&A. And then after that, we're going to have more connecting via breakout rooms. And that's where, you know, some of the great, like, awesome conversation happens. You can either continue the conversation that was happening in the Q&A, or maybe start just introducing yourself and talk about what's going on in your business or where you're located. We've got some folks from kind of all over today, which is so fun. So as we get ready and we're almost ready for the presentation, we want you to really focus on being a supportive listener. So I know we've all got a lot going on. School just started for some parents. You know, it's the start of a new year, kind of new school year, right? So we all kind of get that new school year vibe. But if you can, limit your distractions, focus your energy here on the presentation, and be thinking about what stands out to you. Is there something you want to learn more about? And is there a way that you could share your expertise? And we always ask that you focus on asking questions that start with what or have you ever thought about, and trying to leave that should word off of our plates. So I'm going to go ahead and pause us there and welcome Courtney to the stage.
Thank you so much, Katie. I love this new hand gesture. I'm excited. All right. So let me share my screen. I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you so much to Katie and the team for having me. Katie and I actually met when I was pitching at a Pitchmasters competition. And so I'm excited to be in a more informal venue and platform because this is my favorite, because I just love hearing all the feedback and thoughts people have. But first, I'll share a little bit about my startup and who I am and all that jazz. And like I said earlier, I set a timer and I'm about to start it, but I'll try to be mindful of the 6 minutes. I may go a little bit over. I talk a lot, so you'll probably notice that today, but I love meeting new people. So this is exciting. All right, so I'll get started. Hi, I'm Courtney, and I'm the founder of Avisely, which is an online platform that provides a self-guided consulting experience. Some argue that traditional management consulting won't be around in 20 years. In my experience as a management consultant for nearly a decade, I focused a lot on landing large-scale engagements, and I used a ton of static and standardized templates and playbooks on nearly all of my clients. And what I've heard from organizational leaders is that they're ready for a better way when it comes to consulting. They're ready for cheaper and more accessible professional services, and they're ready for strategic planning that is simple and more efficient. And on top of that, overall business trends aren't helping. So nearly 50% of organizations don't have a strategic plan in place. And even when they do, 90% of companies fail to execute their strategies. And I'm sure all of us can appreciate during COVID, as we're still living through it, we've had to re-envision what our strategies look like and how we're going to implement those new strategies in a new working world. So this is why Avisely was born. I started Avisely this spring, and in 3 simple steps, you can use the platform to identify your strategic needs. So right now we're focused on strategic planning, and then engage with the online platform. So think of the online platform like TurboTax for consulting. So you take a quick survey and answer some questions around what your strategic needs are, go through your goals, your objectives, your milestones, your timelines, different macro environmental forces that can be impacting you, strengths, opportunities, threats, weaknesses, all of the fun stuff that you typically do in a strategic planning process. You do it in a survey, and that produces a plan on a page and an execution roadmap on the platform. And lastly, I'm building out an interactive dashboard so you can track your progress over time. And so the benefits of using a consulting platform are numerous. So it saves money. So when I worked most recently in consulting, I was at a Big Four firm, and my burn rate was about $10,000 a week for my client, just me alone. And Avisely is going to be about $1,000 a year for organizations. It saves time. So from taking the survey to getting your initial strategy under an hour on the platform. It empowers employees. So instead of hiring consultants for some of the basic strategy and execution work, you're able to do it yourself, which is really empowering because consulting is very simple at its core. And consultants love to make it very complex and use a lot of jargon, but it's very, very simple and everyone can do it. And you automate the experience through the platform. So in terms of business model, we have a B2B business model. It's tiered, subscription-based, and I'm also toying with, based on which tier different companies are part of, having embedded content expert hours to help with some of those more nuanced implementation pieces that come up during consulting engagements. So in terms of competition, the consulting world is very vast. I'm sure some of you are consultants. And so there's thousands upon thousands of consulting firms. So I've just picked out a couple just for the sake of the landscape analysis. And Avisely really lives in the upper quadrant. So less expensive, so like $1 a year to use the platform, and then very digital. It's a product. I'm very focused on just building the product right now. So it's a productized experience. And thinking about its direct competitors, Avisely differentiates itself by being a 3-in-1 solution. So you're able to take that TurboTax-like survey, which produces that strategy and roadmap on the platform. And lastly, having access to that interactive dashboard to track your progress and execute over time. Direct competitors are mostly in the static downloadable template space. So downloading a spreadsheet or downloading a PDF. One of the direct competitors, they charge $500 to download a static strategic planning PowerPoint presentation. That's, I think, 100 slides that you have to fill out yourself, which sounds like torture to me, but I think, so trying to simplify the process as much as possible. So just a quick note about just overall market. So the management consulting industry as a whole, it's a huge industry, $250 billion. Just using the case study of mid-sized firms and what they're spending on consulting services, it's about $2.5 billion a year. And then just right-sizing that to a couple of 2 to 3 targeted industries therein, about $100 million. As a ripe initial target. So in terms of go-to-market, just a quick, some of this is aspirational. I'm a one-woman show, and some of it I am doing, but things that are top of mind for me right now, establishing partnerships specifically with smaller consulting firms and really using Avisely as an accelerator tool for consulting firms. So having the ability to productize the first part of strategic planning and then having human consultants on the back end to do more nuanced parts of the implementation. Launching a podcast and blog this fall. Somewhat active on LinkedIn, going to get more active and get more into SEO and Google Ads in 2022, building out a monthly newsletter, and then hopefully, knock on wood, hiring an intern by the end of the year. And then in terms of my product roadmap for 2021, just to give you a sense of where I am with Avisely. So started Avisely in the spring, in March of 2021, participated in an accelerator program, have also participated in different accelerators and incubators before that. And then Q2 and Q3, very focused on customer discovery. So I finished an initial problem solution fit sprint, really focused on overall pain points for potential customers. And then now I'm more in the product market fit stage. So getting more into beta testing the low tech MVP, getting additional feedback, and then hopefully by the end of the year in Q4, partnering with a software development firm to develop the initial wireframe and version 1.0 of the SaaS platform, and then get into revenue, which will be very exciting. So here's me. Like I mentioned, one woman show. I'm Courtney. most of my experience in management consultant, 10 years working for big four firms, government consulting firms, boutique firms, nonprofits, certified in change management and project management. I love all the consulting certifications. And lastly, I teach management consulting, which is so fun. I teach MBA students management consulting at American University. My class is starting in October. So I get to teach this and live this and breathe this every single day. And then lastly, I know I'm running a little bit over time. I just want to talk quickly about financials. So this is just a 3-year projected, run in terms of what we're looking at in terms of customers and yearly spend. So you'll see here, 2022 into 2023 is where growth is going to be catapulted. So going from 50 customers projected to 500 customers, and really revenue picking up dramatically. And having very robust marketing. And so using that as a way to catapult growth going forward. And I know it is one of the questions folks have is how can 1 million cups help me? And I think the main thing is customer feedback. I'm hungry for potential customers, not to like sell you anything, but I just want to talk to folks who are consultants or who are part of late stage startups, who are part of small and medium sized enterprises, because I just want to learn more about how a tool like this could be helpful for you. And that's it. I'm Courtney. I'm at Avisely. You can find me at courtney@avisely.com.
Yay! Yay, Courtney! On occasion, you were freezing a little bit. It wasn't too bad, but there was a few freeze moments. I know, just a few. It was really tiny, but I just wanted to let you know. So if I ended up cutting you off at the end, I apologize. But yay.
No, that's so funny. I've never had unstable internet, but it's just like Murphy's Law, right? Like
I know, it's so true. Well, if you are not familiar with this Zoom feature, now is the time to start raising your hand. You can do that from the reactions tab on Zoom, or participants tab. Sometimes they move it. We're always getting creative here, but please raise your hand if you've got feedback, questions, ideas, or just like there's something Courtney said and you're like, what is that? Tell me more about that. All of that is fair game for our questions. And so first up, we've got Tessa.
Hi, Courtney. Thank you so much. I'm just going to do a little mini cheerleader thing because I really enjoyed your presentation. I got distracted for a moment by a moving animal that's been annoying, and I still could follow what you were saying, and I didn't miss a beat, even though so it's so clear to me and so simplified. And I was just like, for some reason, I felt this like breath of relief, and I'm not even needing like a consultant necessarily at the moment, but I felt a breath of relief for everyone who did, being like, oh, like consult, like someone saying it, like consulting's not that difficult and everyone can do it. And that empowerment aspect of it just like is, I think, like a real selling point of what you've got, that empowerment side of things. Because people just don't need more people on top of people doing things, we just need the same people getting it. And I really appreciate it. I thought it was very clear. And I think you were very succinct in the way you delivered what you were talking about. So no, like I am notorious for ambling on. And so I want to tell you feedback that you were not that.
Oh, that's so kind. That's like the kindest thing anyone's ever said to me.
That's it. So I just want to cheerlead that, and I'll probably have an actual question later.
Yeah,
thanks,
totally.
Tessa. Tiara.
Good morning, Courtney. That was so perfect, so beautiful. You did an amazing job. When you say teaching, is that separate from Avisely?
It is separate from Avisely. I'd love to, there's issues in terms of working in academia and trying to connect your startup to it, but I would love to use my students as a way to help with Avisely. But no, it's very separate. I've been teaching actually for 5 years, so that predates Avisely by quite a lot. And I honestly started teaching as an adjunct professor when I was working in consulting, because I was so understimulated and miserable working for consulting firms. And I was like, I gotta have a way out in terms of just using my brain in a different way. And so I initially taught corporate strategy, and then now I'm starting to teach management consulting, which is very exciting. And it's also hilarious because I'm teaching very traditional management consulting, just, typical, hypothesis driven approach, data gathering, all that fun stuff. And then, and I can't, like the first day of class, I'm going to be like, yeah, so I'm actually trying to automate consultants. So it's going to be a funny first class, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm curious about the hiring. So this is like kind of where I'm at in my business. It's like we put so much on our plates. So like hiring an intern, what's your process for that? You said by the end of the year. Do you already know like where you're going to reach out? I guess you work with students. So
I work with students, but that's the thing that's tricky is I can't like necessarily solicit my current students to be my interns. But I've thought a lot about this, Tiara, because there's two tracks that I'm considering. So I'm finishing the job description first and foremost, and then I'm either going to just do work through my networks, my alumni networks and networks, just different. I live in DC, there's an innovation center at Georgetown that I have a connection to. So just, some of the different centers, and then at AU, there's a center of innovation. And so just connecting and putting the job description out there. And then on LinkedIn, of course. And then, there are firms that help people like me get interns and part-time labor. Because the issue is I can't afford to pay someone for 40 hours of work a week. And I also don't need 40 hours of work a week. I really just need like 2 to 4 hours of work a week just to help me with basic stuff and just to be a brain trust. Because I honestly, this is the hardest thing about being an entrepreneur for me personally is I love working with other people. And so I am like, I gotta work with somebody. I'm thinking about working with, there's a couple different firms that I found. I'm part of this women's coaching group, and that the different women that are in the group they work with. And so that makes it a little bit easier. You have to pay. It's a fee, but they do a lot of the interviewing and all that fun stuff for you. So I'm deciding between those two paths.
gotcha. That's what I was going to recommend, but it seems like you've got it. You know what you're doing.
I don't know, but I would love tips.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks, Tiara. Dan has a question.
Yeah, I was interested. You mentioned that it's, automate and, put together this template for them. Is your process that you're trying to make one process that will work for any organization, or that you're putting together a framework that then you adjust for the different types of organizations? And a follow-up question is, how much are you personally involved when you launch this service? Is it simply just you're only going to talk to somebody via email or chat or something like that if you have a problem? Or is there different levels of engagement that somebody could say, hey, I want a facilitator initially, and then we're going to use the software? Or, what's your intention behind that?
Yeah, those are really good questions. And to be honest, I'm still figuring out some of the nuance there. But this is where my current thinking is. So in terms of organizational type, so this is something that has come up in my customer discovery. And my current thinking based on what I'm hearing from potential customers is that the survey is going to initially ask some demographic information about, your role, what type of organization you work for, is it public, private, nonprofit, what's the size? And so getting some basic information. And then when you go through the survey process, the verbiage and the types of questions and the focus will be different based on which sector you're in and what organizational size. Because, the reality is for a smaller organization, there may just be one person taking the survey, but for a larger organization, there may need to be 10 to 15 to 20 people taking the survey. So, and then the survey, and then on the output side, there will have to be an aggregation and thematic analysis to make sure that different voices are heard. And so I'm thinking it's twofold. It's the verbiage and the experience will be slightly different based on sector and organizational size and type. And then also some of the data analysis and on the back end will have to differ depending on how many people are going to have to take the survey. And then the second question, really interesting. So in terms of involvement of humans, and so this is something that I've been thinking a lot about because, you know, in the product space, what I'm finding is that there's this inertia between focusing on the product and focusing on the service and scaling. So how much automation do you want in the product so you can scale effectively, but also feel like it's customized for users on the ground? And so I have two thoughts there. So I have found through customer discovery, my initial market is probably going to be partnering with smaller consulting firms. So Avisely being that accelerator tool on the ground to help get to version 1.0 of the strategic plan, and then have that dashboard to help with ongoing accountability and tracking. But having a team of consultants, or if it's one or two consultants, you know, help with some of the nuances around implementation. And I say that because what I've learned in customer discovery is that, you know, I've heard that, you know, one time I was talking to someone and she said, you know, and she's an independent consultant, and she said, this tool is awesome. I want to use this as an accelerator. I really need to be there because to help with some of the implementation bits, because I spent 2 hours last week talking to a team about the use of the word all in the company's mission statement. And you're just like, well, what are you going to do? You know, like you can't, like, the tool is not going to solve for all problems. And the way I like to think about it is it solves for maybe 70% of basic strategy and execution, but there's that 30%. And so, you know, I think the partnership model makes sense initially. I think down the road, I would like to have, like I mentioned, some embedded content expert hours based on which tier you're part of. That's, you know, part of your package. So you have those consultants that can help with some of those more nuanced implementation pieces. And I think, you know, the last thing I'll say is I think there is a market, and this has been done before, for direct to consumer consulting. So having Avisely as a product, and then for the more nuanced implementation pieces, having a marketplace online to connect more independent and small scale consultants, or former consultants like me who were like, I'm done with Big Four consulting. I want to, you know, do my own thing, and connect people to clients on the ground based on need and based on expertise. And so I think there's a lot of different directions that Avisely could go in. And I think I'm still figuring out what the market is telling me. And so, yeah, it's interesting. It's exciting. It's a little overwhelming, but we'll see what happens. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Courtney.
Yeah.
I just want to call out like one awesome thing that we can learn from Courtney's presentation, the way that she talks about her customers, and you can just tell that she's done such depth of market research. She's out there talking to folks. And that's something that I think as entrepreneurs and business owners, we have to continually do, because customer sentiment and what people need is constantly evolving. So, you know, take that as a little takeaway for everybody, that like we all need to make sure we're talking to our customers. So thanks for being such a great model of that, Courtney.
Oh, thank you.
Zeki, you are up.
Good day, Courtney. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. I agree with Katie. The passion is there for your customers. And I just wanted to ask you, have you considered in your presentations, maybe front loading it with that information about you, your story, because it was at the end. And sometimes that's a good thing to put it at the end, and sometimes it's a good thing at the beginning. And I'd like to hear it both ways sometime to know what's best. But I would love to have known what drove you to say, I'm leaving the big market stuff. What didn't you like? You know, and here's why I think it should be done this way. And this is, you know, so that goes into your logic of how you're creating it and all that stuff. So just an idea for you is think about it, and it may not be a good idea, but maybe try it one time on your own and see if that causes a different kind of flow for you. But
yeah,
just,
I like. Oh, sorry, I cut you off.
I was just going to say, but that's all I had to say is I really liked everything. I just wanted to say that that's an option for you and something to think about, but not a definite thing. So, because it went really well. I'm not trying to say that. So.
No, I love that. And I have thought about that. And I think that I should try that out because I get at some vague references to my experience at the beginning when I say, in my experience, I focus a lot on landing large scale engagements or using static and standardized templates and playbooks. And so I refer to it. I think it would be more powerful if I could just have like a short vignette that I lead with, to your point, that anchors people into a story versus just, saying, kind of generalisms about my experience, because people like stories. And I think it's instead of, just having kind of like the resume slide at the end, like having a story at the beginning, I think is a good way to bookend it. So I like that.
Yeah, story is definitely a captivating thing, right? We all kind of lean in a little bit more when we hear a story. And I wonder if there's a way that you could make it about your customer even, or about like a problem you saw, or, oh my God, now my cat is going to host the meeting. Cool. This is Zen, everybody who doesn't know him. He joins most weeks. All righty. Next up, we've got Ken joining us from another 1 Million Cups chapter. Welcome. Ooh, you are on mute.
Of course. It's a real pleasure to be able to join up with you guys. I had to do 1 Million Cups locally at 9 a.m. local time. And so it's great to be able to move across the country. Courtney, you betrayed your background as a Big Four consultant with an extraordinarily well-designed, attractive and effective presentation. I think it was great. It looked great. You sounded great. That was really good. I do some consulting myself. We work with small businesses in profit planning. And so one of the things that we work on with businesses is pricing. Mm-hmm. And so there is this gigantic gap between your $10,000 a week run rate and your current pricing.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious about how you came to that, whether you're thinking about looking back at your pricing to determine, what's the obviously the most profitable price point for what you're providing. Tell me a little bit more about pricing.
Yeah, good point. And are you from Loudoun, Virginia? Loudoun County, Virginia?
Yeah. From the Loudoun 1 Million Cups in Virginia. I'm actually based in Falls Church City, but I'm an organizer for 1 Million Cups. Somebody has to slap me if this is inappropriate, but we would love to have you bring the show to Loudoun.
Yeah. No, that's great.
I actually live in Arlington, Virginia. I live in Roslyn, so I'm very close to you, Ken.
That's probably your home chapter.
It is I'm technically part of the Fairfax 1 Million Cups.
Oh, nice.
So you know all my Fairfax buds.
Yes. Well, I'm not as active. I feel like I'm more active at this point in Seattle than I am in Fairfax, but yes.
Well, I can see why you would do that. This is a really good crowd.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. So fun. This is such a good question, pricing. So the short answer is I came up with the pricing based on doing a market analysis of some of my closest competitors. So the folks who are in the less expensive, very digital space and looking at what they're charging their customers per year. Typically folks are having a subscription-based model. Sometimes there is a, one-off, fee for one product. But that's really how I came up with the pricing. I do think that it's an initial hypothesis on pricing. I haven't tested it in the market yet because I'm still pre-revenue. And I think to your point, there could be a world where there is going to be a lot of variation, right? Because you think about, there could be a freemium type product or experience for small businesses or nonprofits. I did get the avisely.org domain because I have a soft spot for nonprofits. I'm like thinking about how I want to, capture that market at some point. And then you have the more small business up to like enterprise, pricing. And so I think on average it's $1,000. I think it'll vary based on what type of organization you are, how many people are going to have access to the tool. If you just have one need, if it's strategic planning, but I am thinking, so the initial use case is strategic planning for the tool. I am going to expand from there. I think the next use case will be change management. So helping organizations with strategic comms and training and stakeholder engagement and all that fun stuff. And then go from there in terms of, what the needs are. And I think based on how many needs you have and the type of organization and the organizational size, it will be tiered. And I think I use the $1,000 as just a benchmark, but I think the reality is, Ken, it's probably going to change. And I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I think the hardest part, I think the blessing and the curse here, and I think former fellow consultants will appreciate this. The hardest thing about being an entrepreneur and coming from consulting is I live and breathe in hypotheses and data gathering and data analysis. And the entrepreneur space wants to tell me to just hurry up and get to market. But my ethos is I have to do a lot of data gathering first, and I have to understand my customers, and then I'll go to market and I'll build my product, because in my mind, it's a waste of time to pay tens of thousands of dollars to software developers, and then I have to redo it once I find out more from my customers that actually what I created was not great for them. So that just another, I know, Katie, I appreciate you talking about customer discovery, and that is the rub. And so I think the $1,000 mark, it still is a work in progress. So yeah.
Yeah, great question. And I think probably all of us as entrepreneurs and business owners, and probably even the big business owners, right? Like the bigger companies, they're always still struggling with and wrestling with and thinking about pricing, right? Like that is a constant thing. I think that probably one of the big places where what you're hearing, Courtney, from the entrepreneur space, and it's actually one of the questions I wrote down because it's also an area that I have to be mindful of, is, thinking about, we could stay in a comfortable, safe place of just talking to people and not having to try to build the thing or not having to try to sell the thing, right? We could just stay there. That's really fun. And so like we could just stay there in the cozy place that doesn't cause us to have to make a leap, right? And have to test it out, right? Because we're going to learn so much from testing. So I feel like that was one of the things that I learned in one of my early launch camps that I did, was like, how can you start testing? How can you start testing? So I don't know if you've thought about that. Like, are there ways that you could start testing this?
Yeah. So in this round of customer discovery, doing a beta test of the low tech tool and having folks use the tool on the ground as well. So thinking about it as almost like a product service combo beta test. So having folks go through the Avisely experience, and then I can help them with some of the service-based consulting on the back end. And so that's my initial thoughts around testing are having the product and service-based combo, and then also partnering with smaller consulting firms, because then I'm not necessarily doing the human side, but I'm partnering with folks, and it helps the scalability in terms of saying, okay, I can partner with 10, 20 small consulting firms. I can deploy the low tech, high fidelity tool, and then I can rely on humans to help with the implementation, and then get feedback from them to help embed into the tool on an ongoing.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking about. And I think to your point, it is, when I showed the product roadmap for 2021, it's a slide I use in all of my, in all of my pitches. It's also a slide that keeps me accountable, because you could live and breathe in customer discovery for years and you're always doing customer discovery. It never ends. But the stake in the sand that says, okay, I'm going from customer discovery to partnering with the software development firm and getting to version 1.0 of my SaaS platform is a really big leap. And I think for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to give myself 9 months of good, interviewing and testing in the market. And then I'm going to cut the cord and I'm going to get to version 1.0, because I could literally spend years talking to people.
Right. Yep. Good for you. Good for you to have that. I love that idea of like using that piece as a piece of accountability for yourself. Jolene.
Hi. So I just want to say, I totally agree with Zach in the way of, I do think telling your story, and actually the piece that perked me up is like that you're actively teaching. And for whatever reason, that means that you're engaged in a different way, which for whatever reason hits me. So the other question I have is, I get why automation works from your side, but my question always is, from the client side, what is my benefit of having something automated for me? And the second question onto that is, you're talking about 2 different clients, one being a small consulting agencies, the second being businesses themselves. If you are going to make this product, how many different outcomes can come of it? So how many questions are you asking? And then how many different plans get spit out? Because if it's 3 plans, then automation doesn't make any difference to me. And I think that explaining how specific and how diverse the output is makes it different if you're going to automate it. So I'm sorry, there's a few different questions in there, but
love it. Okay, so what's in it for me as a client? Good question. So I think the big thing is, on top of saving time, on top of saving money, on top of it's real time, you can say, oh crap, it's Sunday night, I have to present to my board in 3 days, and I need to have a really robust strategic plan, and crap, I probably could have hired my friend's consulting firm, but I didn't, and there's no way I'm going to get a contract in place in time. So there's that scenario. There's, mid-sized firms who are using, the EYs, the Deloittes, the mid-sized firms of the world, and they're kind of fed up with, the standardized robotic approach. And I know that because I, for better or for worse, lived in that world for a long time. And there's a lot of turf wars and politics and all the fun stuff. But I think the big piece is, and this came up earlier, it's really about empowerment and education. So realizing that consulting is so broad, and I'm really just talking about, for this initial use case, strategic planning and under the management consulting umbrella, is very simple, and it's very standardized, and there's a lot of jargon, there's a lot of SWOT analysis, quarters, 5 forces, all these things that will come up, but really at its core, it's what's a priority for me, how do I want to get there, and why is this stuff important? And that's really what it is. And so and staying accountable to that, and being agile and evolving based on what comes up. And so the realizing that you can do that yourself is key. And so for me, I think the biggest thing that Avisely, the biggest challenge Avisely is going to have is the mindset shift. So clients realizing that they don't need to hire consultants to do basic strategy work. And I think that is going to be the hugest pain point for me. And I'm experiencing that. And I think the second piece is the education. So this is something that's come up in customer discovery. And so education is going to be a key component of Avisely. So not only is it going to have the little I buttons as you're going through the survey to help you and guide you answer some of the questions, but we're going to have different modules to help with, why is strategic planning important? How does it work? What is an OKR or KPI? How do you measure success, right? And so some basic modules to help with education. So it's not only I'm feeling empowered taking the survey and realizing I can do it myself, but I'm getting educated at the same time so that I can do this and for other projects and other initiatives. And so those are the 2 pieces, the empowerment and education, that are really, what I'm finding are really powerful for folks on the ground.
Awesome.
And I think
Great.
that's another question, but I will follow. Jolene, if you give me your email, I want to talk offline about the output, because that's a fun thing. I think it's probably gonna take too much time because I know we got to get into breakout rooms and all that fun stuff. So,
Totally.
like,
Yeah.
lots
And I'm actually going to cut us off a little bit early, but yes,
Yeah.
please connect with Courtney. Remember, this is designed to be a jumping off point, right? There's so many other places and reasons why we might want to connect with Courtney afterwards, or why Courtney might want to connect with us. So we've put her email and website in the chat, so please take a look at that. And just to kind of help further that idea of connecting, you know, what can the 1 Million Cups community do for you?
Yes, great. And so I kind of touched on this a little bit in my presentation, but very quickly, what 1 Million Cups can do for me is I just want to have conversations with folks as I continue my customer discovery. So folks who are consultants, who are coming from small, medium-sized firms, who are part of startups, I want to learn from you in terms of, you know, how a tool like this could be helpful, what some of your pain points are, and kind of hash it out in terms of, you know, what's missing in your current approach and, you know, what's working well, what can be improved. And so I think that that's really, for me, the main crux of my needs right now before I partner with a software dev firm. So thank you.
Nice.
Hey, can I hop in real quick and just say something? Courtney, you say you want to talk with folks. Can you give us like, what's the perfect person to talk to? Because like, is it just anyone who's a startup person, or is it someone who's a consultant, and what kind? I'd like to have a little more so I can get the right people to you.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I would say it's folks who are, if they're part of a multi-person firm, are head of, you know, a business unit, or are involved in the strategic planning process to some extent. And I think the consulting part, I would say I love talking to consultants because I'm interested in partnering with consulting firms and understanding how a relationship like that could work. And when I say consultants, it could be an independent consultant all the way to, I'm not up to, I want to disrupt and capture the big four consulting market at some point. I think right now I'm really focused on independent consultant to probably like under 100 people at a consulting firm. So pretty small. But if you're a former consultant and you have a lot of thoughts about consulting, I would just want to talk to you too, because I think there's a lot I can learn from former consultants, because we all have unique experiences and we all have a lot to share and add. So I know it's a general response to your question, Eric, but I'm really open in terms of some of those three kind of groups.
Nice. Awesome. Well, hopefully, if that's you, and I know it is for some folks, you'll connect with Courtney offline, but if not, hopefully you'll connect via email or LinkedIn and share kind of your network. And if you thought that this was fun and thought that like, oh man, I need this kind of feedback for my business, this like new product launch thing I'm doing, etc. All you need to do is be willing to kind of, that you're trying something new, you're willing to ask for help, and that you want to learn by doing. So some folks need that like early stage, I'm just talking about my business for kind of the first time. But if you're like about to launch a new product or service, bring that to your presentation. That can be a cool way that you can present and still get some value before you go to market with some ideas. So you can go to 1millioncups.com/Seattle to present. And again, if you want to get involved, please reach out to us via email. We would love to talk with you about any ideas you have about being an organizer. Make sure you've bookmarked our link tree. I know that it's in the chat. You can also save the chat by clicking on the little 3 dots and click Save Chat. So you might want to do that. Courtney, you'll definitely want to do that because there was some good extra feedback in there or ideas. And next week we have Frank, who's joining us. And it looks like sadly Frank had to drop off, I think. Frank, are you still here? No? Okay. But info app is next week. So please make sure you mark your calendars for next week at 9 a.m. And one of our favorite parts of our community is our breakout rooms. So, we ask that you turn on your video. We'll have like kind of 2 to 4 people per room. And this is a place where you can continue the conversation, go deeper, but you have full permission to leave when you are full. So make sure you connect and enjoy your day. And I think we're all ready. And again, thank you so much to our amazing Leif for keeping us going through the pandemic and helping us transition online. we'll be just seeing you as a community member kind of from here on out. So thanks again, Leif, and thanks again, Courtney, and everybody for showing up. This is a great day. See you later.
Hi, rooms are open.